Now, Arizona is one of those much discussed swing states, and Indigenous voters there will likely play a huge role in picking the next president. Our guest in the spotlight tonight is on the forefront of the effort to empower Indigenous voters. Jaynie Parrish is the executive director and founder of Arizona Native Vote. That's a nonpartisan group that helps foster civic engagement among Indigenous people in the state. Jaynie, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Thank you for having me.
Jaynie, Arizona has the third largest Indigenous population in the U.S. How big of a role do you think this population will play in picking the next president of the United States?
Well, it's absolutely critical that we get more Indigenous Native voters out to vote. And as you mentioned, we have a very large population throughout the state with 22 tribal nations. And that's about a little over a third of the land size as well in the state of Arizona. And this year, as well as many years past, I should point out that Native voters helped win and carry many elections. I remember when I was a child, there were stories of wait till the Navajo vote comes in, and usually those precincts were last in reporting. So here in Arizona, I don't think for our communities anyways, it's that big of a surprise. I'm just fortunate that other non-Indigenous, non-Native communities are catching up.
Tell me, Jaynie, when you speak to Indigenous voters in your state, when you do your outreach, what are some of the issues that people seem most concerned about that are going to affect how they vote?
Thank you for that. Our communities are so diverse. We have a wide variety of issues that people care about, and I'm going to try to frame it in this way. For some of our really good voters, voters that vote every election, that are on time, probably already voted right now, many of them talk to us in forefront about voting rights and securing our right to vote. Next usually comes healthcare and definitely the economy. And then we have a group of voters in the middle that may have voted once in their life or maybe have missed the 2020 election. They too have a wide variety of issues. And we have our new voters, our brand new voters that for the first time registered. And there it's very clear that our, especially young voters, are very concerned about water rights and environmental issues specific to them, along with healthcare and a lot of the mental health issues.
Now, when you mentioned some of those issues that matter to some of the people you spoke to, like healthcare, mental health care, and environmental protections, those are typically issues that you would be more likely to find in Kamala Harris's platform than in Donald Trump's. Is it fair to say that this is the way that people you've talked to are leaning, or is it a different picture?
Well, again, I think it depends on the voter and the community. Our communities and our counties are very diverse. We're going to have more of one voter than the other. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, so I'm going to put that out there. But we do listen, and people do ask us from time to time, well, what basic questions? Well, what's the difference between this party and this party? And we do try to explain and have materials on hand to show them where to go and look a little bit more. But another way we like to take that conversation really is we want to look for candidates who include our communities, who talk about our communities, and please take a look at the policies and the platforms of where they're talking about our communities. And I think it'll show the voters very clearly where candidates stand on that, not just the presidential, but everything all the way down to local offices. And I think a majority of our voters in our region, rural and tribal, we're always happy, especially when we have more Native candidates running. And there are policies and certain campaigns where we see more Indigenous candidates running for office and winning, and also being at the helm of designing some of these, carrying through some of these policy pieces.
I love that you were saying that, we want to be, obviously, you want to be represented, and yet Indigenous voters are not nearly mentioned as much in terms of the candidates courting them as African American voters or Latino voters. Some of the demographics that are really hotly contested, and you can see both candidates trying really hard to win them over. Why do you think that is, that we're not hearing as much about people running for the top office in the country wanting to woo their Indigenous voters?
Believe it or not, this has been an improvement in 2024. In 2020, there has been an online, Indigenous communities made it a joke, but nobody knew what to call our voting blocks. And on a major TV news network, they had something else. They had Black, Native, Latino voters, white voters, and then that they didn't quite understand what this group was or how to label it. So they literally put something else on their TV screens to try to explain this voting factor. And it's really unfortunate, really, to be invisible. I think that is a mantra that many Indigenous peoples, whether Canada, here, or globally, are fighting to be heard and represented. However, I have to say that when we have voters who are seeing themselves more reflected, we saw many campaign speeches these last few months that are including Native voters. Both parties are trying to do what they can to reach voters now in our community. And I would say the caveat that, though, as a ground teams person, a grassroots person, is unfortunately a lot of this outreach comes too late. It comes now, 2 weeks before an election, when a lot of this investment should be a year before.
Tell me, now that we are 2 weeks, thank you for explaining that. And now that we are 2 weeks before the election, unfortunately, we have time for just one more question. But I wanted to ask you about the barriers. What barriers, of course, at the end of the day, what's most important is that every Indigenous person in the U.S. and in your state of Arizona comes out and votes on that day. What barriers still exist to every Indigenous person getting their vote out, getting out to vote on that day?
Yes, I wish we had more time for this. There is more than 100 different ways to suppress Native, rural, and tribal voters, unfortunately. There's a great report out by the Native American Rights Fund that showcases all of this. But for us as a grassroots ground team, people-to-people contact is crucial. Yes, we can say go online, we can text, but a lot of the successes we've seen is having conversations with people in our community. And so what that means is, right now, we're in the get out the vote phase, so it means turnout. And what that means is having conversations like, did you make a plan to vote? Can you tell me what that plan looks like? Do you know what you need to bring to the voting polls? Can you bring some family and friends along with you? Can you text 3 people now or call them now? And so it's more or less kind of extending that network beyond just the one voter. But really, and that can come out in a variety of ways. It can come out to person-to-person events. In fact, our team is doing an incredible job right now hosting festivals around Halloween, around horseshoe events. There's even goat roping events where we're in touch with the voters that we've been talking to the last year and inviting them to come out, have fun, but also let us know if you voted or if you need help or other family members. So really, what it means is coming back to the family and the community level so that we vote collectively.
What an amazing job you're doing. Jaynie, thank you so much for joining us and explaining. I feel illuminated. I've learned so many things. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
That was Jaynie Parrish. She's Executive Director of Arizona Native Vote.